everybody, and thank you for joining us for another edition of the Richard Listens Show, East Coast version. So we're doing it early over here in Los Angeles. But if you want to create a podcast and you want to have guests, you've got to get flexible and meet your guests where they're at. I've used my one-day reprieve called Lag Omer, which is a spiritual day of appreciation, gratitude, and miracles, often celebrated by bonfires and cookouts and things of that nature if we were not in quarantine time. So I've used mine to clean up and get rid of some of my caveman scruff. So I'm excited to show that off a little bit. Anyway, today we have a friend of mine and colleague who is also an expert in the neuroemotional technique. He's a therapist, a spokesman, a coach, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the ways he's grown his podcast, which is highly successful and continues to grow a practice on the East Coast, even as we move forward through quarantine and beyond. Thanks to all of you who are tuning in. As always, please check me out on Instagram at RichardListens. And if you can, please go to my patreon.com/RichardListens page to figure out a way to donate, subscribe, or support. Okay, without further ado, my guest joining us in between his busy cram schedule down in Florida. Thank you so much for being with us. Author, speaker, therapist, podcaster extraordinaire, host of UWinning Life, Mr. Jason Wasser. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. So I'm not the books are not yet out. They're in the works, but it will soon be added to the title, and that's good positive thinking on your side.
Well, I see a lot of parallels between us, and I was trying to stay up till 1:30 in the morning trying to put together paragraphs. Like at some stage, like when you're in the trenches, like I admire all writers who do this all the time, because the levels of like separating technique from form, from your voice, from all the other hands that try and get in there.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
But as it is with that, my guess is that it is with everything else when you're trying to put out your ultimate truest product, which is yourself, on any platform, right? Whether it's your performance athlete, whether you're a musician, whether you're working as an entrepreneur, whether you're in a family and you're trying to be the best version of yourself in a relationship, or whatever that dynamic is, right? How much influence do we have around us to actually just be truly us, with the benefit of everybody else uplifting us by whatever resources we can tap into. So yeah, totally spot on with the same thing for being an author.
Yeah. All right. And are you wearing the state of Florida today? Is that?
I am wearing, it's my Jimmy Buffett A1A Florida t-shirt. Just happen to put it on right now that I'm working from home. I have the benefit of no longer having to, I don't buy into that belief that that as a therapist, I have to dress a certain way. My private practice is very casual, jeans and a polo shirt. Shoes sometimes came off halfway through the day anyway.
I like it. I don't know if you've intentionally staged this, but for those of you not watching the video, I mean, you have your bike ready to go out and take care of, some self-care with a helmet, and you have your guitar, and then you have your family room logo. I mean,
banner, right? Yep. It's all. This is my second room. My condo has become my home office, and it's representative of everything I'm trying to do, right? It's mind, body, spirit. So, the body is the bike, the spirit is the music, and the mind has to be taking care of all those three things, right? As a practitioner. So I have to be living as an embodiment of that.
Good point. Yeah. And we hear that and we talk about that a lot as a therapist. How much more important has that been to you since, Corona began? And did it begin the same time in Florida around mid-March?
Yeah, I mean, I think California and us were kind of around the same. You guys were a little bit more extreme, and thankfully, I think you guys are, had a little bit more of a better handle on things because it was such a massive breakout so fast. I mean, Florida is just a mess when it comes to policies and who's handling, not only the government side, but also how people are not taking this so seriously. Those who are, those who are not, are not. But yeah, one of the things I had to commit to when I realized that I came home from a trip the second to last weekend of March, and got off a plane from a conference I was hosting with a buddy of mine for entrepreneurs. And that was it. That was the last time. I went to Trader Joe's within a day or two. I filled up my gas tank. I went over to my office to pick up some supplies, and I have not formally been out for anything outside of going to do exercise um, on a consistent basis. I'm not traveling anywhere. I haven't seen my family. They all live here within 20 minutes away. We're not even, I saw my dad for the first time last week, but at 20 feet away, not even inside the house. So we're on my side, I'm taking it very seriously because it's more of the asymptomatic concerns and I have of the symptomatic concerns. So, and I want to protect people. I don't want to have to go to bed at night thinking, God forbid, do I know if I have anything and did I infect anybody? So riding my bike at 15 miles an hour far away from somebody is probably the healthiest thing I could be doing. Going on my runs and sitting home and playing guitar is probably the healthiest thing I could do. So I do challenge my clients to be taking, that into consideration. What's the mind, body, spirit stuff that we can tap into at this time?
Yeah, and I have to tell you, by the way, I know we're going to get into the seriousness of the profession, and that Jimmy Buffett, that was probably one of the three most confusing things when I went to school at University of Florida, Gainesville, was, I mean, the Confederate flags threw me for a little bit of a loop, and I had to adjust and have some interesting discussions. But Jimmy Buffett is everywhere. He's a folk hero down there. It was played at every bar. Margaritaville was
Exactly.
so it was
I
a
was thinking about
cultural
because I know that
introduction.
right. I know he had some health issues the last couple of years, and I'm like who like as far as like the God forbid day, right? We just Jerry Stiller just passed yesterday, right? Ben Stiller's
Rest in
father,
peace.
right? So it's kind of like these people are like cultural icons. Like what's like I thought about this like what's gonna happen? Like God forbid, like it's gonna be like a literally probably become a holiday. And I'm shocked that I'm not sure if it already isn't, if there's not already Margarita Day, Margaritaville Day in Florida, but I'm sure at some point, like, I don't have a personal relationship with the guy, but I can tell you that his music and his books have been very therapeutic for me. Uh, at least 10 or so years ago when I first got into him, really, that it does create a psychological landscape of like just being in a very soothing experience. And I think right now, especially, we need that. We need those things that we can choose to pivot to. And everybody's using this word pivot, but I'm going to use it in a different framework. It's like, what are you doing for your work pivot? I'm like, what are you pivoting to that's more healthy for you? That's more relaxing for you? That's more fun for you? And Jimmy Buffett's music is exactly that. So
It's really powerful. I mean, through all of this, my Sirius XM in my car, even though I've used one tank and in over 2 months, is set to fish radio, and my
uh-huh.
family won't let me listen to it around them. But that's like, it's timeless, and the shows come on from,
Right. Every
from when
Tuesday
I was in
night.
college,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so it's a little bit of my place of like, nobody can take that from me, no matter what's
Exactly.
going on, as long I can be safe in the car. I don't have to, I can
You
lower
create
my
your own
mask.
you create your own space. And it's funny, I actually was wearing my fish t-shirt yesterday and I was doing facilitating a workshop and one of the people on there were like, oh, you're a fish head. I'm like, I want to hear
You're
what
right.
your loaded package is with that, right? But we all have, and I think this goes into like a deeper psychology of like brand identification of how we show up in the world. And right, whether it's the political landscape right now, where some people are literally wearing it on their hats, right, on certain sides, that they're red hats as a political brand identification, or some people in Jewish cultures or other religious cultures may have different headgear and stuff like that, right? Everything's a brand identification in some way, shape, or form. But for me, like music, like no one's gonna walk up to a person who has a Beatles shirt and be like, man, I have such bad therapeutic issues with that. They ruined my life, right? That's never gonna happen, you know? So we need more of these positive things being shown up in our landscape that will be like, oh, okay, that's a good place to go to. So, I'm a big fan of, right, like you said, go in your car listening to Fish. And I know they're doing a live stream, right? Every Tuesday night, they're doing dinner and a movie of a
I
concert.
haven't caught it. I saw the ad for it, so I may
Yeah,
have to
right. So
block that out. So
there you
thank you
go.
for that
So tonight, there
reminder.
you go. So this evening, right, is dinner and a movie. So right. So for people who need that therapeutic release right now, the beautiful thing about what's going on is that technology has been the biggest blessing for this pandemic period. And you know this as a clinical professional as well as I do, that I had to pivot within 24 hours with my entire private practice. And I had to move my entire caseload online in 24 hours. And I
And
only have
you had a pretty full caseload, right?
I have a full caseload. Yeah, I'm seeing 20 to 30 clients a week, plus my coaching clients that I was seeing online already. So, so the only complaint I had was someone's like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable with it." And I share with them like, "Listen, as long as you're not 100% hating it, if you hate it 93%, we're going to keep going." And then I started asking my clients, like we were talking about before, you know, I'm not going to ask, because you and I talked about like seeing in all the therapy groups and all these, and all online, and they're like, "Well, it's awful and I don't like it." I'm like, "Okay, but does that mean you're bringing less value?" And I'm asking all my clients that. I'm not asking them, "Does it feel weird? Does it feel different?" Of course it feels weird, and of course it feels different. But are you getting the same value you got from seeing me in person? And every single client says yes. In fact, I actually don't mind it, because I'm not now commuting 20 minutes to your office each way, or I don't have to hustle home from traffic at work, or I don't have to worry about, X, Y, and Z and getting an extra babysitter. So in a way, it actually has been a benefit, but the value always trumps to me. Not Trump as in the guy in the office, but value always trumps everything else. And I think that's a very important thing during this time where we have to, share with everybody who's listening, provide value, be of value. It's going to oversee everything else.
Well, it's really, thank you for sharing that perspective, Jason. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because there's this, you want to create a safe space for somebody else. And I know, I thank my karate dojos, therapy offices that I've, visited. It's like, if it's not safe, if it's not someplace that makes you feel good to go there, then
Then don't. Yeah.
yeah, and you're probably, you're not going to, and you're not going to open up. So I definitely can respect, especially when people are in a house and stuck on a sofa with four people. We've seen these kind of, if you've seen the video on Facebook of the teacher who's like talking and saying everything's fine, then holding up signs like "help me," like like they're under hostage. So
Exactly.
it may be hard for clients, and I have some people who just are reserved to begin with, to carve out that space in their home. The initial sessions may look, how you're going to communicate with your family. I meet with Jason at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays, and you guys
Yep.
keep the dogs. And
For sure. Right. I have a client, one of my clients called me because they were just brought back to work. Their office reopened. They were working from home. So their session was as late as I could do it yesterday, but it was on their drive home. And I know where I'm like, "Oh, you just," as I'm watching in the rear view mirror, like as I'm looking at the car, because they're facing this way, right? And I'm like, "Oh, you just passed my office." You know, like, really? I'm like, "Well, we haven't met in person yet, but that's where my office was, that you're probably never going to see me in now." But because I know they literally live right around the corner from me. Um, but it's interesting to see that, like, listen, technology is a blessing. I know all the people that like were obviously before this with, the debates of social media and social privacy and tech privacy and all that stuff. But I do have to say that the blessing of technology has been a freaking miracle. It has been lifesavers. It has been resources. People are still making money. People are still being able to get their therapeutic needs met. I told you before, I'm never going to go to a primary care physician again in person. Never. I have teledoc, 12 minutes of waiting online. I see the person from the time I hit schedule a session, right, to be on hold, to the time I picked up a prescription was 40, and back home was 45 minutes round trip. I'm never
That's
going to go.
incredible.
I'm
Do
never
you
going
think?
to.
Do you
Never.
think that have they attained that efficiency in major cities though, like Los Angeles or New
I
York?
would assume so, because the guy I was seeing was all the way up somewhere in North Florida, working out of his apartment. So, right, it's just a queue that populates whoever they were seeing in that platform of Teledoc. And I know for Blue Cross Blue Shield, at least in Florida, it's free. The copay, there's no copay. So, so if those who are on Blue Cross Blue Shield out who are listening, check with your plan to see. So if you don't have to go wait into a doctor's office, especially now during the pandemic, you can see a primary care just for that. But I think, right, yeah, I think that like efficiency is going to win. I think the people who are putting themselves out in front of people right now, because you have a captive audience. So I know bands that are doing like Tuesday night, like Fish, right? It's not a live concert, but they're doing a replay of their concerts. But I know so many musicians and bands and people that are like, I can now get clients anywhere in the world by teaching a lesson. I can things have changed radically, and I want people to think about how they can keep up and stop thinking about the rules that no longer exist, and start applying their life to a very different platform. Someone just emailed me right before we got on, a buddy of mine in New York, said, hey, would you be interested in going in a singles dating group for people from New York and California? I'm like, they're equally socially distanced to me as someone who's around the corner that I potentially would go out on a date. They're the same distance right now to me.
Right.
So yeah,
Exactly.
so yes, I'll meet someone in California or Chicago or Toronto, or it's the same social distance. I'm not seeing anybody right now anyway. So, right. So we have, the rules have to change.
Yeah, we're
Come
having
on.
a upcoming show this month with a matchmaker, and she's going to talk about how her game has changed. But in a lot of it, right, just like with athletes, right, or any other performer, a lot of it is the pre-work. How much do you do to really get clear on what's your ideal match? I forget what statistics she told me. April Bayer's her name. Just of the percentage of like Tinder swipes that actually
Connect.
result in
Yeah.
a chat. Like, it's so
So
small.
minuscule. Well, first of
So
all, half the people on Tinder, you have to be careful with Tinder. Half the people on there are fake. So, you have to be careful with that right off the bat. And there are better dating apps, right? There's Hinge, and there's other ones that might be more specific, that are much more, Bumble, which actually allows the female to talk to the man first if they match. So it gives the power back in that type of scenario, which is really awesome. But I would say, like, the people that are, whatever we're looking for, and I apply this, and this is what I speak about a lot. And we were talking about Lee Mood, which is this really awesome, what I would call a Jewish version of TED Talks. The last class I gave from them in February was all about using spiritual lenses to create values-based decision-making in your life, and how to define what you want based on those lenses, so that you have a higher opportunity to attract that which you're looking for. And that applies not just personally in your relationships and your financials and where you're looking to live and what type of schools you might want to send your children to, or if you want to have children, all those things, but to align and draw people who are similar to that, personally as well as professionally. Who do you hire? Who do you work with as a business partner? What type of clients you'll take? Someone called me an hour ago, and they're for sure not going to be a client that's going to fit for my practice. So I'm going to refer them out once I actually get into besides what I just heard on the voicemail. So I'm crystal clear with that. And I think that's something like where you're talking about what's the pregame for athletes is like, what are the parameters, mindset of everything is, what are the parameters that I want to play in, and how can I go 100% into that and be definitive, be binary. It's a yes or a no. It's a 1 or a 0.
yeah, it's really interesting, and I just want to highlight where you're speaking about, the portion of, you know, the opportunity for the person behind the therapist here. The opportunity that we have to feel good, that you have to feel the direction you're going, that you're safe to be able to give this care and create this container and remain balanced.
Yeah,
Often this is like a step that's missed in burnout, and
for
just
sure.
being this endless march of dealing with fatigue and healing. I
Mm-hmm.
think Psychology Today has an article more related to what medical doctors are doing on the front line right now, but about um, Zoom fatigue and burnout. I mean, how many? It's like it's a never-ending.
It's right. On one side, it's neurologically exhausting because there's a cognitive dissonance of being used to connect with people, right? And then all of a sudden, now we're spending our full day, for you and I and other practitioners or other people who are now fully pivoted their business fully online. It's a radically different neurological shift. So there is that, like, why am I so tired connecting to people when in real life it might either energize you, right? If you're an introvert and extrovert, but still, like, there's a cognitive dissonance. There's no handshakes, there's no hugs, there's no high fives, that whole thing has disappeared, even in a business setting where there's culturally appropriate touch. All these things we've become completely, we're in a sensory deprivation type of thing.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, we're having all this fear-based data coming in to our life, so we're automatically neurologically put into fight or flight, like you're talking about, like this stress pattern. Like we're now getting to the stage of adrenal fatigue, that we went into shock, we went into fight or flight, we went into self-preservation, we went into isolation and massive cleaning and all this stuff. And now 4 to 6 weeks in, our adrenals are now drained. So one of the other things that I'm suggesting to my clients is not only, because I do a lot of integrative nutrition in my practice, is not only do we need to be taking a minimum of 2,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, because we're for sure, even in Florida or California, we're still not getting enough vitamin D. And there's research proving that mortality rates are highly connected to vitamin D deficiency, but also anything you can do to support your adrenals right now. Any supplementation for your adrenals would be high. So vitamin B's, make sure you're getting their vitamin B complex, because it's stress handling, it's anxiety. And the people who are out there who are like, oh, it's such a long day, I'm gonna have a little bit more to drink now because I'm not going anywhere and I'm not driving anywhere. That actually has a deficient, that actually pulls out vitamin B from your body. So this
Right.
state of stress, which you think you're drinking to help yourself to relax at the end of this workday from working at home or being around everybody all your day, is actually making it worse for you.
Right. And of course, consult your doctor if you have any particular, thyroid or autoimmune or anything like that. But I know a lot of people have been afraid to reach out. And I just learned about a company that does in-home blood testing if you're worried about your own personal levels and don't want to go into a hospital or clinic, so
Yep.
you don't have to avoid your care. That's
Yep.
the real fear, is that a lot of elective procedures got canceled, and so people said, well, as long as I don't have corona, uh you know
Right, and there actually is a significant, unfortunately, right? We have to talk about this as reality. I don't want to beat around the bush. There are too many deaths of people who are not doing their self care, because if they have something that doesn't feel right, that isn't a symptom for corona, that they're just not going to the doctor, and you still need to go. And that's why I'm saying, like, telehealth is available to you. For people who are trying to figure out what their nutrition is and their supplementation is, there's functional medicine, functional nutrition practitioners all over the world. So you can find that online by typing in functional medicine practitioner, functional nutritionist near me, and they will order the labs for you. You don't even, most of the people I work with are all online, and I'm actually going to be starting a training program this summer. So, and I'm going to be fully online as a new resource to my practice. But there's no excuse now for self care. You can order weights, you can do push-ups, you can order Amazon Prime if you need to, or Target or Walmart, and get the food that you just order a little bit better of a quality food than you're used to. Stop ordering all the junk food. I do my Amazon Prime Whole Foods order once a week. I think I get one bag of gluten-free chips or gluten-free pretzels. That's it. That's my junk. One bag of gluten-free pretzels. Not
Good for you.
so,
I know it's tough. I mean, I think there's a tendency to feel, if you're stuck in your home. I talked about this in my presentation last night on, called it quarantunity, right? What's the opportunity in this quarantine? But there's a feeling that if I'm working in my home office and I got to get up and move, especially when you can't go places, I'm going to walk to the kitchen. And food does give you dopamine. I want to empathize with everybody because I've done it. I'm eating a lot more. There's all of a sudden that filter on, desserts every day now, right? Like all of a sudden that was not there for a long time.
mhm.
So the little bit of, feeling you need that 3 o'clock sugar is all of a sudden back. So,
Yeah. But
um,
that's adrenal. So that's a very common, right? So that's a blood sugar handling issue, but it's also highly connected to adrenals. But like you were talking before about autoimmune and thyroid, those people who are this is showing up for, like, I would highly suggest, and I see this in my clients all the time, and I'm like, this isn't an emotional thing. Your emotions are secondary to how your body's handling X, Y, and Z, and mood shifts and mood changes, or your inability to handle stress is a blood sugar regulation scenario. So again, going back exactly to what you're saying, like for me, like I found that, like, if I do some like yogurt with some almond butter in the afternoon, that will help stabilize. And I do the sugar-free, whatever, Greek yogurt and a little bit of almond butter, mix it in. I get that little bit of that sweetness, so it tricks my brain. My stomach is coated for the next couple hours of food, but I know, like, I'm waiting. That coffee craving kicks in 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you can't sleep, and that whole cycle's all over again, right? So I get it, and it's something that we're not talking about enough, of like what is true self-care when it even comes to our nutrition process during this time.
yeah, I mean, that was going on before this crisis, and that only gets accentuated
Yes.
because when you're in a crisis and you're just focused on surviving or how you're going to pay the bills, it's really hard to make changes. Um, but from the book Atomic Habits, which I read, right, we know, like, the 1% changes, the really small changes, is where I've been trying to push myself, because We're in it right there with you. And I think that's a unique landscape as therapists and practitioners, that a lot of times clients are talking about things and we have to kind of hold back going, wow, I feel the same thing. I mean, it's one thing to go through, grief. I lost my father last summer, and say, well, I went through this, but they haven't. Right. So I know I can go and take care of that, with my own
Mm-hmm.
consultation or grief work. But it's another when you're in the same shoes as your client.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And I think what you just said is such a powerful thing. And if it's okay for me to talk about what you just said for a moment,
sure, sure.
right? I experienced grief, right? You said you experienced grief with the unfortunate loss of your dad last summer. And so neurologically, and you know this, but I'm not sure how well the listeners know this, is that our brain is really split up into three ways. It's the triune brain theory: neocortex, rational brain; mammalian brain, which is our emotions; and timeless, something that we can think about from 20 years ago will trigger our nervous system and our physiology as it is happening right now; and our reptilian brain, which is the fight or flight, safety, survival. So the work that I do as a therapist and as a neuro-emotional technique practitioner, I don't look just as like neck up emotions. I look at things about from the Chinese medicine lens of like where the body carries stored and charged emotions that don't get resolved. And in the 5-element meridian theory, each pathway corresponds to specific sets of body organs, and each of those body organs are specifically connected to a bunch of emotions. So for me, when I'm hearing someone who said, I have grief, I immediately, connect that back to the lungs and the large intestine. And then that's called the metal meridian. So the body doesn't, only the rational part of our brain makes a narrative around it. But the mammalian and reptilian part of our brain doesn't care. It just knows it feels a certain way. So when people are talking about, well, like you're saying, well, it's a different type of grief. No, no, no. Grief is grief. The only difference is our narrative around what that means for us personally, right?
Right. Which
And
is a lot of what EMDR, goes to treating, is changing that story or addressing it.
exactly. And so for me, from the perspective I'm working at, it's like, it doesn't matter to me because the story can be more saturated or not. I just want to help you change the nervous system response so you can come to a neutral place. Because someone's grief about losing their job during this time can go into the story of, what's the reason why it's such a problem for them. And that story can be so many different layers. No, and it could be the exact same story the same story behind you losing your father, and why that's, besides obviously it's a loss of a human life and the person who's been one of the closest people in your life, but what specifically the worst part about that for you could have the exact same or different meaning than someone else going through a grief situation and having the same or different narrative, or what the worst part about that for them is, right? So it's interesting when people, and I had a conversation about this with somebody before, they're like, well, I wouldn't go to someone who's a couples counselor who isn't married. Or I'm like, okay, but like I have clients who are HIV positive and I don't have HIV, and or I have clients who have all these functional medicine based symptomology that, they have lupus, or they have obsessive compulsive disorder, or they have OCD. And through the integrative nutrition protocols, we've helped them get better. I don't need to have that problem in order to help you. I need to see outside of the lens, outside of the picture frame that you're stuck in. So I want to
Right.
give a perspective that I know very much you agree with to the
In
people.
fact, somebody who may have had the exact or a similar story to you may be just stuck
Yep.
in that
Bias.
perspective, right?
Right.
In that bias, exactly. And I had MMA fighters on. I have some shows coming out with Kevin Casey, who former. He's married to Muhammad Ali's daughter, former Gracie student, and he was discussing now as a sensei, as he teaches people, that if he's busy only in his ego of only seeing, who's doing well or who's doing it right, if he's not attuned to every single student and what they need, uh, and maybe a doctor, right? He's not going to use his hands and punch hard. There's a reason, a very good reason. If you're not connected to that person, you're just busy with your ego as the master, because that was what you had to do to train and get better. You cannot effectively reach another human being. So being able to really see somebody's experience and be open to it sometimes means I don't have this story playing in the background of, oh, I know it because I've been through it. I already got it. I
Yeah.
got your story.
And I have this very strong belief with everybody that I work with that I'm never going to let them convince me of the story that they've been telling is truly their actual potential. In other words, right, we all come in with justifications and excuses and limitations of why we're stuck. And that's why they end up with me and you, right? But the story that they keep telling about that is kind of as if, right, it's so heavily loaded and it's so stuck in a groove, right? A record groove, right? Telling the same thing over and over again, that in a way they're trying to convince the world that that's so. And our job as professionals is to never allow them to convince us that. And I tell my clients that. I'm like, so you've been saying that you aren't good at this, or this hasn't happened for you, or you keep ending up in these bad relationships. If I believe that to be true for you, how would I be able to be helpful for you, right? If I believed, you know what, you're right, that's what it's going to be. And now with all these stories, you have convinced me. I'm on your side. You are so right. How can I be a pivotable, a person who's going to help them shift and change and pivot? Because my job is not to carry that. My job is to, and then my job is to say, you don't have to carry that. That's just a narrative and a story. So I really do. And I think Esther Hicks from the Laws of Attraction said that, like, she's never, ever going to let anybody convince them that the reality that they're holding in right now is the reality that's authentic and completely fulfilling for them. Because if it was, they wouldn't be sitting here in front of me.
That's right. That's right. That really the power of being in the roles we're in, and to really be reminded to keep that perspective going for your clients.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's tempting to get pulled in. Famous scene from Robin Williams in What Dreams May Come, right? And trying to pull his wife up from the grim hell of depression and suffering, and after a while of trying to pull, he gets pulled down too. So
Yeah, the quicksand theory, right? It's I tell my clients this all the time. Two things. One is you can never make yourself feel bad enough to get someone else to feel better. You can never be poor enough to make someone who's poor feel richer. You can never make yourself sick enough to help someone who's sick get healthier, and right, and so forth. But two, you know, when we try to solve a problem, and this is so right in your, literally on your field, as a sports psychologist, is the fight or flight that we get stuck in when we try to solve a problem from a place that feels like crap, when we're in that fight or flight, when we're in that emergency mode, is not proactive. It's completely reactive. So I tell my clients all the time to never solve a problem from a place that feels like crap, because you're in quicksand, and the more you try to move when you're in quicksand, the faster you get stuck. So that's exactly the example I give. Like, no, that's a quicksand thought. That's a quicksand perspective. Okay, so let's avoid that for a second. Let's go talk about something else. Let's get to a place of feeling better, or talking about something that feels good to you, and from there, now let's go back and solve that problem.
yeah, I've been talking about it a lot lately, and I think one of the main, besides you mentioned technology, and the abilities of technology to help us pivot or change the directions or the ways in which we release people, and never mind that it doesn't fully replace the hug or the handshake, and that we need that. But besides technology, I think mindfulness is the greatest gift of this quarantine. That at whatever age, with the amount of apps and things, like the ability, when early on in this process, I had probably the first week, I'm not sure if it was COVID or not, but I had a fever. I kicked my ankle. I rolled it trying to socially distance from people on our, non-paved, unpaved streets out front. I hit my elbow on the fireplace. I couldn't move. I was like a bubble boy. And in that gift of sitting still here, trying to do I couldn't do any more than I was doing right now, but I got a great appreciation for stillness. And and we're always trying to tell kids and things like that, just sit still, but some of these apps really are, if you can tap into breathing, if you can tap into visualization, if you could just allow yourself to notice. It's kind of ironic, right here in LA we've had some of the best air quality. We have hummingbirds and butterflies. So
Yeah. I heard you had an earthquake though a few days ago or a few weeks ago. I don't know if
yeah, like 10 days ago,
yeah.
there was a big jolt. So it's pretty funny how you're talking about fight or flight. You kind of, I hear you're so used to it that you're like, okay, is it a short one or
So I was there on the ones that happened over July 4th weekend. So those were pretty big this past summer. I was there for those.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was not that was a non-pleasant experience for me. I was in the shower and I'm like, okay, this isn't stopping. My friend didn't come back into the house and the door didn't just shut. Do I run out naked into the living room? Is this building going to collapse on me? Because I can handle a hurricane. We know it's coming for 3 weeks. But an earthquake, especially when you're in the shower and it's the first time you've had one of that magnitude in your life, it's scary. So it's
Yeah, we probably have the opposite experience where we're so used to them. You're kind of like, oh, just
right.
yeah,
Go on with your
just.
day.
But I remember coming out here from New York early on and being like, when you see the chandeliers shaking and the, um, but again, a chance to take a breath. I always use the metaphor of the squirrel, right? Kind of quickly assess, is it safe? Which tree do you need to climb up, or where do you need to go to get to safety?
Because
Um,
isn't the first thought that people have when it comes to that is
to
this,
run outside.
well, no,
Yeah.
is this the big one? Right? That's one of the like, is this
Well,
finally the big one?
I think people, especially people who've lived through like the Northridge Crake, that was before I was out here, but things like that, where things got really
Dangerous.
unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But
So
but every year when you get your home insurance policy out here and it asks you if you want your earthquake coverage, you're like, oh, that's a thing. If the insurers are making money on it, it's like
yeah, we got it here with hurricane and flood.
that,
So right,
that's a
it's
cynical perspective, but it is a part of our California reality. And but look, I've noticed a lot of other people in quarantine. They're talking to me and they're looking out the window and almost what's going on. They're like, it's raining again. I can't even go outside. So I know for the week we had out here of rain, um, I mean, and for people without resources, right? We had a leak in two of our rooms when all of a sudden your small place gets even smaller. Um,
right. People have lost air conditioning. How do I bring someone in during this time? Right? Are they even going to service all that stuff? Yeah, I have friends who are right. Literally, it was a blizzard. Right, a blizzard in Colorado last week. Right, it was snow all across the northeast. Right, that whole thing from Colorado all the way over to New York. So right, the blessings that we have to also take a look at in all of our scenarios. Right, maybe it's a good thing that it did snow so hard in those places because those were maybe some of the states where they're like, we're going to open up the state, and maybe it would have been too soon, and that kept people inside. I don't know. I don't run the universe. I don't understand how things are happening and working. I don't even look at news apps. I have no news apps on my phone. I haven't looked at the news. The news has not been on my TV. In fact, the TV is only on for on demand, or I'm finally catching up on The Office. I'm that far behind. But like,
so how do you do that? How do you, I mean, I want to make sure we get to your podcast and how you've adjusted, obviously giving up a lot of speaking gigs for the short future, but how do you do that, right? How do you balance staying in the know, staying informed with keeping your mental sanity and controlling the controllables, right?
so I know what I need to know because whatever's showing up on my Facebook feed of the two sides of my social group is pretty applicable to what's going on in the country. So, you have the people all the way on one side that everything's a conspiracy theory and everybody's involved with everybody's stuff and this person's making money off this and right and it's to get everybody vaccinated and blah 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 and the population in control and Fauci's making money and there's the Blue Angels were chemtrails that they were being able to do right with five. You have that extreme and then you have like nope, everybody needs to stay in place, don't go anywhere even 40 feet near anybody, stay at home, right, blah 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 blah, right, both extremes. And I'm like, okay, if that's what's going on my feed, magnify that by what's going on the news, right? And obviously, social media and people, the telephone game obviously is what social media is. But I then just from there, I'm like, yeah, all right. So this is what's going to show up in my feed. How much I'm only producing things on my feed and putting things out on my feed that are positive, good for alls, that are healthcare, meaning like self-care related, that are uplifting stuff, that are the research on vitamin D, that like, hey, listen, right now everybody should be taking, like I said before, that 2,000 IUs of vitamin D because of the research that is being shown on there. So this is a good for all. This is not a political thing. This is hardcore data of this will help your immunity if you're autoimmune for sure. If you have food allergies and nature allergies, vitamin D is going to be a big boon for you no matter what. So this is a good for all. So I think that like when I'm focusing on that, I'm focusing on all the workshops I'm giving online. I think, let's see, Saturday night, I led a singles mixer. Sunday night, I gave a young professionals class on what's your dating brand. Last night, I jumped on a online happy hour. Tonight, I'm going to be doing, I don't know, right? So, and I'm trying to work out in between that and take care of whatever else. And I have my podcasts every day at lunchtime. I book Monday through Thursday podcast interviews, whether I'm on yours, right, and somebody else's,
Yes.
or I'm doing mine for my podcast. So,
That's incredible. So yeah, so tell us a little bit about your podcast. I mean, I see you've done a ton of episodes. The quality of the subject matter is fascinating, and we hope to be a guest someday.
yes,
Um,
in the works. It's
uh,
in the works.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the UWinning Life podcast came as an offshoot of my private practice. There's so many topics that I feel that are coming up consistently uh, with all of my clients, and I'm very particular with who I draw. And I do draw like you do, like you're in the elite performance category. I think I draw elite young professionals, and my young professionals can be anywhere from 15 to 60, but they're still like people who are tapped into wanting to become better. They're not going to stay stuck in a victim mindset, and it's not anybody else's fault. I have to take ownership. I have to take accountability. I have that in my private practice. Over the years, I've been doing this thing that I mentioned before called neuro-emotional technique, which is a clinically researched and journal published mind-body modality that gets rid of self-sabotaging or unresolved stress patterns. And the last 3 years, I've been really involved in this entrepreneur community, where I'm now a certified business coach through that. So I've been introduced to some heavy hitters in that world that are real deal, that if you had no clue they existed, you would never know, because they're not blowing it up on social media and here's my Lambo and here's like all those people that we hate. These are real deal business entrepreneurs that are creating programs for business owners to bring more simplicity, probability, and leverage. And it's all through word of mouth. And it's really values based community. So one of the people in that community had a podcast who I became very close with. I was in an accountability group with that person. And at a certain point, I'm like, I've never thought about doing this. I'm actually born an introvert, and all my speaking and all this other stuff is really something that has become a practice talent for me. And once I realized that I can do it, I actually hired his podcast guy to start doing my editing, because he started his own company after leaving full-time working for this gentleman. And I'm about to, by July. So I started this past summer in July. The first, by July 4th, it will be episode 50.
Amazing.
So the person actually who inspired me the most, Matt Monero, is a gentleman. He has a book and a podcast called You Need More Money. His company does about $150 million a year, and in financing for trucks and big rigs, but he's also just an incredible human being, a real deal human being. So I'm saving his episode for my 50th.
That's
Which will be the
incredible.
week of my birthday, so July 4th, a few weeks.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, so it's psychology, spirituality, natural wellness, and entrepreneurship as the four pillars that I believe will help someone become the most successful human being.
Wow. Well, Jason, I mean, I think we could dish for a few hours here on a couple of subjects. I'm pretty amazed with all the traveling, the weekend retreats you do, which in another day and age, I'd love to collaborate on. And so many things, including, yeah, I just did my first Zoom online presentation, Zoom room. So how to manage the chat box and give your
Yep,
presentation could be a whole webinar in itself. So,
absolutely. I'm
but
actually thinking about doing that, right? Because I've been doing this since my podcast, and I think I've been using Zoom since last summer for my podcast. So I'm like, I should just do a Zoom chat one night for people to teach people how to do this for an hour, just for fun. Because, right, you said like you had to work your way through it, and I'm working with one of these nonprofit groups, and I'm teaching them how to do it. So,
it's been the greatest gift for me. The greatest gift
yeah,
for me is somebody who sends me, like, there's this guy, Todd.tv. He tells you like how to do an Instagram live, everything with Instagram. So it's like, here we are, like I used the technology before, but now all those things that people used to say, you should do a live video, you should do it, you go, yeah. But now to know the intricacies of the technology and exactly how to do, having someone explain to you, look, I've been doing self-care. Last night I was studying how to appropriately paint the inside of a door. I don't even know what you call that side of a door. Okay.
the door symbol, the door, right? I don't know. Yeah,
anyone know, you get a prize. So,
right.
I mean, learning how to do these things and interesting details, right? Like you don't want to do it where like a dog or a pet could come in while you were painting, like details, but it's really, having experts explain things to you and be able to practice them at home. So if anyone needs a self-care thing, get your green thumb on, or pick up a hammer and hang some pictures,
Yeah.
put some landscapes around you to pick up your mood.
Well, what's the
But
thing? Everybody's baking banana bread, right? That's like you can't get flour anywhere. I'm like, well, I'm good. I'm gluten free. I don't have to worry about that. I just have to get my gluten free flour. But like, right, that's the thing. Everybody's baking banana bread right now. Like that's the thing, right? Not everybody, but a lot. But like, there's now
yeah,
a shortage of flour and baking goods and ingredients.
that's right.
You can find toilet paper now, but not banana bread ingredients.
It's
So
funny. One of
yeah.
our friends works at Trader Joe's, and he posted on Mother's Day, like, I don't know what you're all doing with, vodka and dill, but I hope your mothers are happy. Something like that. Like he listed what
Oh,
the most frequently purchased items were.
wow. So I wonder if people are getting into a little bit of a pickling thing. You know, I
Maybe it
don't
was
know.
pickled meat and mixed
Yeah.
drinks. I think sound like, but that's just
Well, I
one
think there
area.
is a good. I did see a good recipe for Nova for lox with vodka and right
Wow.
to make your own Nova with vodka and salt and pepper and
I'll
chili.
take the challenge.
I mean,
I'll take
listen,
it.
it's pretty simple. Yeah, apparently you can't screw it up. So
Well, Jason Wasser from the Family Room, from the podcast name is
UWinning life.
UWinning Life, coming up on episodes. I think you get through 46 now, somewhere in there.
We're almost, yeah, we're I think 44, 45 just dropped.
So check
Yeah.
that out on iTunes. You can't miss it. Great graphic there. Share with us in closing. I know you got to get back to work. How people can reach you and stay in touch, other than
Sure.
the show notes, which we'll post under the
Absolutely.
comments.
So yeah, so Instagram is the easiest. Jason Wasser LMFT, which stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist, and there's two S's in Wasser. But also my practice is the Family Room SFL, which stands for South Florida.com. So the Family Room SFL.com, and that's all there. So happy to be resourced.
Amazing.
Like
Well, a
people,
lot of gratitude for you, for your
thank you.
tips and mentorship, and for leading the way with telehealth, with being able to change the ways in which we deliver service and care to community, to reach out and try and be a model for healthy self-care, spirituality, and adaptation, and dare I say, pivoting in in, uh,
Yeah,
in changing times. I'm thankful for you and for your flexibility today, and
pleasure. Thank you.
hope to keep the connection going.
Looking forward, and yeah, definitely can't wait to have you on mine and bring a lot of what you have in the world to my community.
Thank you so much. Well, that was an informative visit from colleague and speaker, a therapist of the Family Room, Jason Wasser. Thank you. If you haven't already, check him out on Instagram or give his podcast a shout out. Thank you to all the guests who make time and effort to be present with us on the Richard Listens show. Thank you to all of you for bringing your authentic voice, listening, commenting, contributing on Instagram, and for all of you who've begun donating even $1, $3 to the show on patreon.com/RichardListens. Please do not hesitate. Do so now. Share with 2 friends. We cannot provide this material without your support. So thank you for doing that from the bottom of my heart, for helping me maintain my passion and show up for you. I'm Richard Listens, and I'm out.